career services and education services to the Palestinians. This structural support is why people in Gaza have a sky-high 97% literacy rate despite the horrid conditions they live under. This is why Israel wants UNRWA destroyed. Remember, Israel initially claimed they knew UNRWA helped with October 7th because of information they gained via torture. Then Israel realized these tortured obtained confessions would not fly on the international stage. Then Western governments took this fake dossier and then used it as justification to defund UNRWA. So in light of the ICJ ruling that Israel is committing a genocide against the Palestinian people, Western governments colluded in order to cut aid to the people the court ruled are victims of a genocide. This is truly nasty work, man. So as we have the Biden administration pretending to be concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, they're pushing for cutting aid to the lifeline of millions of Gazans based on a dossier that has no evidence. So the United States took this fake dossier at face value. Meanwhile, South Africa at the ICJ presented an ironclad argument that the ICJ accepted that Israel's committing a genocide. Despite the ICJ ruling and all the overwhelming evidence, the position of the United States is that all charges of genocide against Israel are baseless. So the International Court of Justice, bad. Fake dossiers created by Israeli intelligence, good. The Biden administration is truly fucking depraved. Make no mistake about it. Joe Biden is doing this because he wants to see as many dead Palestinians as possible.
So Tucker Carlson is on a trip to Russia, and the U.S. has collectively lost their fucking minds because of it. It seems like some in mainstream politics and media have this gut-wrenching fear that Tucker Carlson might interview Putin and do some real journalism. Now, the interview itself would be a big deal because of who Putin is and who Tucker is, but it's also a big deal for another reason. Tucker tried to do this before when he worked for Fox News, and the NSA, that's right, the U.S. government got involved, started literally going through this man's personal emails and basically forced Fox News to pull the plug on the interview. So now you have weirdos like Bill Kristol saying that Tucker Carlson shouldn't be able to re-enter the country, bruh, just because he's in Russia. And they don't even know why he's there because technically, as of right now, the Kremlin has denied any interview that may or may not take place. Now, all these people in the mainstream don't want Tucker Carlson to interview Vladimir Putin because he's a quote-unquote enemy of the United States. But this is a new phenomenon, I assure you, because before, we would champion journalists who are willing to engage with perceived adversaries of the United States. For example, here's Larry King while working for CNN interviewing Muammar Gaddafi. Right? Could you imagine CNN actually doing an interview with Muammar Gaddafi today? It's Pulitzer Prize winner and former CNN journalist Peter Arnett discussing his interview with Osama bin Laden. Yup, that same Osama bin Laden. And yet, he didn't catch any flack for it. In fact, he was celebrated for it in just one of the most famous interviews on the planet. Now, we already know that journalism has in some ways always been under attack. But now more than ever, they don't want you to hear anything from the other side. And do you wonder why that may be? Well, in this particular case, you have the most famous journalist on Twitter going to interview one of the most powerful world leaders right after Ukraine has basically gotten their asses handed to them, and Putin effectively came out on top. And I think that he might have a bone to pick with the Western world and the propaganda that they've put out regarding Russia in its fight against the neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine. But effectively, all Tucker Carlson would be doing is maintaining a time-honored tradition by other journalists. But he is being attacked for potentially doing the exact same type of work other mainstream journalists like Larry King and Peter Arnett have done. So is it really about the journalism, or is it about NATO and the United States getting exposed in more lies? Because they know that now people's eyes and hearts are open and are willing to hear the other perspective, the one that's not being provided by the mainstream media here in the States.
What's poppin', my friends? Welcome back. We got another banger. You know what we're doing Nick and Night Season 2 this year. Banger after banger after banger. That's Nico with a banger. Our boy Nico. I'm going to be on Nico's channel tomorrow, by the way. If you're not subscribed to Nico House, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's back, if you didn't know. Dropping banger after banger. Big shout out to Hotspot. If you haven't followed them already, follow them on Twitter. They are doing fantastic work. As you guys see, they're helping me make the bangers of a video. And we have another banger of a guest with us today. Someone that we appreciate and we respect a lot of R&B. And I'm a big fan of his work, Garland Nix. I'm going to bring him in very soon. I had a whole show planned for you guys. You guys already knew I had to toss it out today. You guys already know how it is. I might get to the other stuff later. I had to toss everything out today because Tucker Carlson is interviewing Putin, which is notable. So for me personally, I read a lot of Putin interviews. You know what I mean? It's one of the things that our society hates. They would hate for you to see what our enemies is actually saying. So as someone who's anti-imperialist, that's one of the things. The first thing I do. How are they lying about the enemy? How are they lying about the people they want us to go to war with? So like the interview gonna be whatever for me, but the most newsworthy, because I've seen a lot of Putin interviews, what's newsworthy to me is the reaction of the West and the reaction of liberals. I'm gonna show you guys a few clips here soon, where the worst elements of McCarthyism is now prevalent among liberal society. Remember back in the day where neocons who told you that you are pro-whatever, pro-Russia, pro-Iran, pro-Al-Qaeda if you speak out against any United States enemy? That is what like the most unhinged neocons used to say. Like the Bill Kristol, Dick Cheney like Republicans, they would say, if you don't support a war on terror, you support bin Laden or whatever. You know what I mean? And that was considered unhinged. I remember growing up, this ideology being considered unhinged. That same ideology of calling anyone who advocates for peace a traitor to this country is now 100% acceptable liberal discourse nowadays. You have CNN, you have every single liberal journalist that's calling Tucker Carlson a traitor to this country because he want to talk to Vladimir Putin. Do you guys see how our society lost its goddamn mind? Remember Tara Reid, the amazing woman who was sexually assaulted by Joe Biden very credibly? She had to go to Russia to seek asylum because the federal government was going after her. You guys want to know what they called Tara Reid? Every single liberal said Tara Reid is a traitor to the United States because she went to Russia where she had to seek asylum from our government. Do you guys understand what the hell's going on right now? Now I'm going to bring my guests in real quick. But the last thoughts I have here, and this is why it's important to watch this interview, even if you don't like Tucker Carlson. Hell, I'll rephrase what I said. Watch any interview of Putin, period. It don't have to be the Tucker Carlson one. I think you probably should. I'm going to watch it. It's going to be fucking interesting. But we need to change the culture in this country. And this is what I was talking about regarding my takes on soldiers and what the culture moving forward need to be. We need to make it so we humanize our enemies. I explained many times before. I'm not like a big Putin fan. Never was. Even though I'm accused of being a Putin puppet. You know what I mean? I just see him as someone who's resisting United States empire. And what the United States empire wants to do, they want us to turn every single enemy of the United States as a cartoon character. Putin is the worst. Next Hitler. Xi Jinping is the greatest threat to the United States. Hamas are unhinged evil terrorists. You notice how they never show you guys what Putin says? You guys notice how they never show you what Hamas says? When they tell you that Hamas is an anti-Jewish organization that want to kill Jews. And then literally in their fucking 2017 charter, they said this is not a religious battle against Jewish people. We acknowledge that Jewish people oppose apartheid all over the world. You had Hamas as an organization that said many times that it had nothing to do with religion at all. But many Americans don't know that because it's very important for empire to hide what our enemies are saying. It's very important for empire to demonize our enemies and turn them into like James Bond villains to trick people to go into war. And the embarrassing Bernie Sanders left fell for it. Bernie Sanders has Putin derangement syndrome. The entire Bernie Sanders left had Putin derangement syndrome. The entire social democrat left spread lies about China and Xi Jinping. Empire brain. you're still imperialist, but you don't know it. I can't wait to get Garland Nixon take on this. I'm going to introduce my guest here. Amazing journalist, writer, does great work on YouTube. I'm a fan of the show. So we had Garland Nixon a few times on. It's been too long since we had you back on RBN. It's always an honor to have you on. Welcome back to RBN, Garland Nixon.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. I want to get your general take. I'm going to show you guys this video from CNN where they have, and I'll just pick this clip because this clip went pretty viral, but there were so many segments where they just outright calling anyone who advocates for peace in Ukraine, anyone who's willing to talk to the Russian people as the enemy. So I'm going to play this video of CNN reaction to Tucker Carlson just engaging in journalism. And then I want to get your reaction to the story and to this clip. But let's watch this madness, fam.
A massive shakeup in Kyiv coming as Putin is trying to court the MAGA GOP in the United States. In fact, one of the leaders of the MAGA GOP is in Moscow tonight. It's the man you see here with the MAGA leader, Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, possibly there in Moscow to interview Putin, definitely there as a Putin supporting celebrity. Just listen to how Russian state media is breathlessly celebrating his visit.
Independent journalist Tucker Carlson has flown to Russia from the U.S. via Turkey to Vnukovo Airport. He saw Spartacus Ballet at the Bolshoi Theater, had lunch in a nice restaurant, went for a ride around town, rode the subway. He charged his smartphone via USB port.
Oh, how scary. He's living and doing stuff in Russia. Be afraid. Let's continue.
And connected to a fast and free Wi-Fi internet.
He charged his phone, although they're knowing the details about the fact that it was during USB port may give him reason to think twice about all of this. But look at them talking about him like a celebrity. Everything he does on camera, breathlessly repeated. Now, it is unclear if an interview between Putin and Carlson will take place, but if it...
There was literally nothing different in that clip from Russian media from what we do anytime like a famous person does anything in our country. Garland, what's your initial reaction? Do you see the unhinged meltdown before we continue the video?
Oh, well, absolutely. And I think the issue here is that I remember, I think it was Brian Stelter when WikiLeaks released some info and he said, you shouldn't read it. Let us read it. And then we'll tell you what's in it. And that's the attitude they have. Now he's going to say, I'm going to listen to this guy. I'm going to have an interpreter and you can hear what he says. That's not the way it works with the false media that we have now. Their job is to interpret the entire world for you through the lens of the U.S. War machine, through the lens of the U.S. Neoliberal capitalist machine. So they're supposed to interpret everything and they're afraid that we will get direct information that, heaven forbid, we will be able to listen to and interpret on our own. And that's a problem for them because they lie all the time. That's the big problem. They lie all the time. They're afraid you might hear something that's true.
Mika Brzezinski from Morning Joe, our favorite show here. I love Morning Joe. It's the voice of the government. It's literally state media. If you want to know what the government thinks, you watch Morning Joe. And there was a story where Joe Biden is a big fan of Morning Joe because you see these prep talks that they do they give him Joe Biden every day. Joe Biden's so underrated. He's so underappreciated. But anyway, Mika Brzezinski let the game away one time when she said it's the media job to control how people think. She said it live on air, and then people paused like, did you just say that? And you're not supposed to say that part, Mika. But that's what Mika's saying, that is the mainstream opinion in corporate media. They believe their job is control how the populace think. They even demonize doing your own research. You know what I mean? They demonize looking at alternative sources. You know what I mean? I look at sources from all type of media, including corporate media. When I make my hotspot videos, I include a lot of New York Times and Washington Post headlines. You know what I mean? I include a lot of Atlantic headlines, CNN, MSNBC. I think it made my argument even more devastating because I'm telling you guys, they're not hiding the information I have. A lot of people are just afraid to make the same conclusions I have. I'm gonna let the clip finish and I'll get your final thoughts on this. And I'm gonna show you guys the clip with Tucker Carlson just explaining why he's talking to Putin. And like you see one side going crazy unhinged McCarthyite, And then you just see Tucker Carlson like, I just want to talk to Putin, dude. Like it's a clear contrast. But I continue the clip and I'll pass it back to you.
It gives Putin a chance to sit down with a big supporter.
It might be worth asking yourself, since it is getting pretty serious, what is this really about? Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get me fired for disagreeing with him? Does he eat dogs? These are fair questions, and the answer to all of them is no. Vladimir Putin didn't do any of that.
I'll actually always remember watching that clip. I was standing in Ukraine 48 hours before the war began there. Well, Carlson then stood by Putin consistently all the way through. And that is why
I know people who I would consider fans of Putin. Tucker Carlson simply said, why are we being conditioned to hate Putin? I know people who do content that's like 100% pro-Putin. I would not categorize what Tucker does as pro-Putin. He is just humanizing the enemy. He is against a conflict, and being against a conflict makes the media paint him as a traitor. This ideology was considered extreme neocon right when I was growing up during the George W. Bush Jr. administration. But you guys see how this is normalized among liberal discourse to call people who are against war traitors.
Well, and I'll add this. This is the mentality. I'm glad you brought up George W. Bush, because if you remember, one of the things he said is, you're either with us or against us, right? Wherein people like us, and I'm sure people in the chat who are watching right now, before we decide what we support or don't support, we want to hear as much unbiased information as we can, so we can kind of use our own intellectual resources, our background, our cultural and ideological views to listen to this information and figure out how we think about it. What she's saying there is this: either you hate Putin or you support Putin. There's nothing in between. There's no, look, he's in another, as Paul Robeson said, when they asked him about the Soviet Union or about Stalin, he said, I'm not Russian. That's up to the Russian people to decide about their leader. But I can listen to it and decide. First of all, I don't know Putin, I don't know Trump, and I don't know her. So this is not some emotional thing for me to like or not like, support or not support people that I don't even know. But if you're going to take all my money and give it to somebody else for a war against this guy, and then you're going to tell me what he thinks, it would be nice if I could hear out of his own mouth what he thinks. That's what they don't want. Because they pretend as though we're so stupid that we need them to interpret reality for us. But what they really know is that we're not. And they're afraid that if people start hearing reality and hearing the truth, that it'll make it glaringly obvious that we're being had. And people like us who are always saying to people every day, you're being had, you're being lied to. Look forward to hearing something that we don't get an opportunity to normally hear.
Yeah, let's let the clip finish, and I'm gonna show you guys just a little bit of Tucker Carlson video. I'm probably not gonna watch the whole thing because it's like 6 minutes, but I want to show you guys a little bit of what he says on why he wants to interview Putin. But I'll let the clip finish. Feel free to interrupt if you have any reactions, Garland.
Why he can go to Moscow now without any fear of being summarily imprisoned. He's a hero. This was Putin's mouthpiece in the United States, somebody who had turned a blind eye to the atrocities committed by Putin because they were happening far away. Once vibrant towns turned to ruins,
Isn't that what you guys doing to Gaza? Denying the International Court of Justice ruled that Israel's committing a genocide, and you guys are still denying that fact. Tucker never did that. He's against us escalating war in Ukraine. But Garland, I think you want to chime in. Feel free if you want to.
No, I was going to say, I was basically what you were saying. The idea that people who are supporting a current genocide in which more people were killed, more children were killed in the first 2 weeks of the Gaza onslaught than they were in the last 2 years in Ukraine. And they have the nerve to say that somebody else, with what we see Netanyahu is doing. Netanyahu's not a butcher. He's not a killer. He's just an ally. So it is just preposterous that they would show this, which makes, if you looked at Gaza, that looks like the pristine center of, of Paris, and compared to what Gaza looks like, it's absurd.
You guys realize that the Biden administration and the media claim that Putin was committing a genocide? Their claim is that Putin kidnapped children. You guys realize that they claim that Putin kidnapped less children than Israel killed in the first week of their campaign.
Well, you
so
gotta
Israel
add this.
killing those children is good. Well, go ahead, Carl.
Well, here's the thing about it, too. Okay, so they say he kidnapped these children and he took them out of a war zone and into Russia without one complaint from a parent. Not one parent came forward and said, oh, man, I got a problem with this. They just said, well, he moved kids out of here into a war zone, out of a war zone into a non-war zone. They couldn't find a single parent anywhere that would complain because, let's face it, these people were Russian-speaking people who were living in Ukraine where it's illegal to speak their native language. None of them was going to complain. They were actually leaving and all heading for Russia. So you don't have a complaint against Putin and you go and you make a complaint that he's kidnapping children. It's just preposterous. Again, that's why they can't afford for us to hear the truth, because
Absolutely.
Their lies are so transparently obvious.
Absolutely. This clip is almost done. Let's wrap it up.
Because they were happening far away. Once vibrant towns turned to ruins, mass graves with dozens of bodies in the Kyiv suburbs, a theater full of innocent women and children sheltering, bombed. Despite the giant world children written on the roof, more than 200,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed or injured. And tonight, Putin is trying to seize on the fact that Zelensky's military appears to be in turmoil, capitalizing on a moment of intense American political dysfunction and intensifying.
Dude, I can't believe they're still doing this. Because, doing this thing where they're pretending that Ukraine is somehow a uniquely evil war. I covered how there were a lot of European politicians, some Swedish politicians who were sweet summer children. They were so naive. They were disillusioned because they heard what the West said about Ukraine, and now they see United States policy in Gaza, and these sweet summer children, they're like, we heard the United States speak out against war crimes, and now we are super confused with how they're not only refusing to hold Israel accountable, but they are helping them. I covered this a few weeks ago, how politics was saying that. So the hypocrisy shown between the United States reaction, media reaction to Ukraine compared to Gaza, completely exposes the hypocrisy of the rules-based order. So I would think you would want to keep that like on the hush-hush moving forward. But before we move on, go ahead, Garland, if you want to chime in.
And here's the other thing. Okay, so the Biden administration makes these claims against Russia. They killed had a bunch of people in Bucha, right? Like, for instance, Bucha, right? They say, oh, they killed all of these people. Then Russia says, can you give us a list of the names? Never came up with a list of the names. All these people were killed, but you don't have one name. How about China? China is creating a genocide against the Uyghurs. Okay, the Muslim nations send in a delegation of Muslim leaders and they can't find one body. Now, this is a genocide, the first genocide where you can't produce one death, you can't produce one refugee, and might I add, there are more Uyghurs now than there were before. What kind of genocide is that? So they make these accusations, the government makes the accusations, and her job is simply to repeat them. My question is this: if Russia did these things, why didn't you go to the ICJ? Why didn't they do what South Africa did? You know why they didn't? Because it's just a pack of lies. Every other day, oh, Russia killed 1,000 people and whatever. What are their names? They never got their names. Go to the ICJ and the UN. They won't do it. How about this? The Nord Stream's blown up. Okay, great. The UN, Russia went to the UN and said, we request that the United Nations do an investigation into Nord Stream. We did not blow it up. The US and their allies blocked an investigation. They blocked an investigation into Nord Stream. So you're going to accuse Russia of doing things, and then Russia says we want an investigation. Oh no, we don't need an investigation. So we're supposed to trust these people. It's a joke.
RBN, Garland Nixon, the gray zone vindicated once again. I've seen quote unquote anti-imperialists reporting, media people like The Intercept, The Nation, the Bernie Left, that repeat uncritically the Uyghur genocide. Uncritically for years. In fact, do you guys know how much shit I have gotten over the years for refusing to go with this bullshit? And not from the right. I'm talking about from the liberals and the Bernie left, who uncritically repeat state propaganda. And now that we've seen what happened in Gaza, I hope every single person who pushed that bullshit feels as dumb as they should. The idea that China can pull a secret genocide in the age of social media. People will say this shit with a serious face, Garland.
Yeah, well, these are the people who told us they were going to elect Joe Biden and drag him to the left. I asked them how that's going.
So if you was interested, you can probably read some of the subtitles. I'll play just a little bit of it. You guys can check it out for yourself. Maybe a minute of this video, because I want you guys to hear what Tucker says, and then we can quickly move on, because we got still a bit to talk about. So yeah, let's play a little bit and we can move on.
Interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians, and it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy. The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the US dollar. These are not small changes. They are history-altering developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware.
So Tucker wants to inform people and do journalism, the journalism that CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post would never do, because they want to keep you in the dark. And they demonize them for this. Anyone who follows my channel knows my disagreement with Tucker. There's literally no reason for me to repeat it, because you guys heard it. Right. No need for me to waste time. But whenever you have liberals that attack Tucker and class enemies, as I define them, in inefficient ways like this, they only make them look better. They only make Tucker look better. Anyway, let me move on. Anything you want to add to Garland? I got
you know what? But those same people couldn't even come on your channel right now and make a coherent argument against you. You know what I mean? They could just all they do is repeat talking points about, name calling, childish stuff about somebody being a Putin puppet or something like that. They don't even have a decent coherent argument, because they're all repeating the talking points that's given to them by their masters.
Yes, sir. They want us to hate Putin, Garland. You have Vladimir Putin that's speaking out and calling out the genocide in Gaza. We had the Biden administration that said the ICJ ruling is baseless. Which one is the bad guy in this situation? I know the world isn't black and white, but I think we should call things how it is sometimes. I see one person saying the Gaza Strip is now the largest children's cemetery in the world, and I see one administration cutting aid to UNRWA, the lifeline to Palestinians. Which one is his true enemy? CNN will have you to believe that the person who's butchering children in Gaza is worse than this guy.
Yeah, well, you know what? I still recall a caller I had on a radio show, and I asked him, I said, well, let me ask you this. If the United States, if Russia and China overthrew the government of Mexico and started building bases and arming and training the Mexican government and meeting with them saying, soon we're going to go on the offense against the United States. Because that's what happened. There's recordings of Lindsey Graham talking to the Azov battalion saying, next year we're going on the offense against Russia. And so I asked the guy, I said, would you expect that the United States would go to war in Mexico if Russia and China's building bases, literally saying they're going to go to war with us? He said, yes. I would. Well, he beat around the bush, but it finally said yes. And I hit him with the question. I said, why? And he hung up because he couldn't answer that question. Because we all know the question why. Because they would feel a legitimate threat. Any superpower would feel a legitimate threat if another superpower overthrew a government on their border. The name Ukraine literally means borderland, and the borderland is Russia. The name Ukraine refers to Russia when it says we're the borderland of what? Of Russia. Now you're going to go to a country that's literally named the borderland of Russia. The country through which Hitler came to attack Russia, the country through which Napoleon came to attack Russia. And then you're going to build bases and arm guys running around with swastikas, goose stepping, yelling Sieg Heil, and you think Russia's not going to attack? I'm going to tell you right now, if I were the president of Russia or any country and another superpower came to my border, yes, I would fight to protect my border. That's not saying Putin is good, bad, or indifferent. That's not an evaluation of Putin, because our CIA chief right now, anyone can look up a cable that he wrote called "Nyet Means Nyet." He, William Burns, the CIA chief right now, was the ambassador to Russia. And he wrote a cable back to the US State Department that said, everyone in Russia that I talked to, people who like Putin, hate him, everyone said, Ukraine is a red line. If we come into Ukraine, they're going to go to war. So our people knew good and well that going into Ukraine would cause a war. And that's precisely why they did it. See, that's the evil reality here that our government has to hide, is because they deliberately went into war. They deliberately set Ukraine up for war because they wanted Ukraine to go to war with Russia. And Ukraine is just nothing but a sacrificial lamb to be torn to shreds so they can hopefully weaken Russia. But just like everything else these idiots do, it backfired on them.
Yeah, this is why I told you guys I would never forgive anyone who fell for the NATO proxy war bullshit. The Bernie left don't know none of this shit. Matt Duss, Bernie foreign policy advisor, knows none of this shit. Ron Khanna knows none of this shit. You tell me they're not as smart as us. That's bullshit. They know this. They chose to side with the empire. To get this issue wrong was unforgivable to me. It's like the West, they want to emasculate their enemies. And they want to decolonize our mind. They want to colonize our mind to the point where we don't feel the need to defend our sovereignty or our right to exist. And I'm gonna try to explain what I mean in a better way. There's a reason why I never condemned Hamas. You don't have to comment on this, but I never condemned Hamas because if my mindset was, if any government, especially a hostile foreign government, did half to my people what Israel did to me, I would be down for some Hamas shit. So I read countless stories about Palestinians being forcibly evicted from their homes. Do you guys know the kind of person I would turn into if a hostile foreign government evicted my mother? Like, imagine your mom was forcibly evicted from their home at gunpoint, and then another family moved in. You know how fast I'd be down for some Hamas shit? I'm not afraid to say that. If someone did that shit to my mother, my family, my cousin, my brother, my sister. Let happen to one person, let alone their entire life in Gaza. But Garland, I'll pass to you and we can move on. Last word.
People should read this book. I've heard Norm Finkelstein talk about it. I love to read. I've read it. It's called The Fires of Jubilee. It is a book about the Nat Turner Rebellion, right? And the Nat Turner Rebellion, Nat Turner and his guys, what they did was unthinkable. You know what I mean? They went in houses, they killed everybody, men, women, children. They cut their heads off, they shot them, they hit them with axes. They went along a road where the slave owners' houses were, and they went in, they killed everybody, right? And you say to yourself, well, those are atrocities, that terrible, men, women, and children. However, do you ever hear anybody say, let's talk about the Nat Turner Rebellion without giving you the context of centuries of slavery, of humiliation, rape, murder, horrible things happening? So when you look at what happened in slavery, you say, boy, those are terrible atrocities that they did. But based on hundreds of years of atrocities, you certainly understand how people can be driven to that point. You understand it. So when you look at what happened on October 7th, you say, well, my God, if you understand the context that these people were living in, were surviving in, right now, imagine you can never leave the town you live in. You can't leave it. You can't get a passport. You can't drive out. You can't do nothing. You literally, Israel controlled the food in Palestine and that coming into Palestine, and they did calculations so that the people there would get just enough that they didn't starve to death. They treated these people in the most horrific way, men, women, and children. Then every couple of years, they bombed the crap out of them. If that happened to, how many of us would remain sane? How many of us, after they killed your mother and father and brother, you got to understand why somebody would strap a bomb to themselves. If you come home, your whole extended family, everybody alive in your family, you come home, the house is flat and they're all dead. At that point, I'd be like, well, I'm dead myself anyway. It doesn't matter now. Just point me to the enemy and give me a weapon to attack them with. That's reality.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Who
sir.
wouldn't do that? What human being wouldn't do that if put in that circumstance?
That's perfectly well said, Garland. To back up what you said, we covered this many times. The depravity of Israel cannot be overstated. You have Israeli settlers that are attacking aid trucks going into Gaza. Like, if someone wrote like an evil country in like media, I'd be like, come on, bro, you overdoing it, bro. But this is reality. This is luckily, thank God. I don't have a segment plan, but the Israel bill apparently was killed today. I was tweeting about it. It has a $17 billion bill that was sent to fund the Israeli genocide. That standalone bill was killed, thank God. You got to know that's a round amount of money you need to end homelessness. Mm-hmm. We were just about to give it to one of the most evil countries we've seen in the modern era.
I think haven't we given like 150 billion or something so far to Ukraine? And they won 118 more billion. We've given like 150 billion. Imagine if you were to go to the poor communities throughout this country and spread that billion here. We just think 100 billion. So we're now getting up around 200 billion, right? Imagine that's 4 billion for every state. And some little teeny states like Rhode Island, you know, how much is going on there, right? But just think what could be done for the people of America if these neocons weren't out here marauding around trying to hold on to world hegemony, which they lost, which they don't even have, and filling their friends' money, pockets with money. This is our money, either our tax money, or they're borrowing it for us and our kids in the future to have to pay. And it's being used for evil purposes.
Yeah, well said, girl. I wanted to ask you about, I love how Due Distance put it. This is a World War III bill. This is the bill that liberals are big sad that Mike Johnson arguably killed. They was willing to go so far right on the board. You know, the same level they used to call Trump a fascist. You gotta know the policy that separated Trump from the average Republican, according to Democrats, was the border policies. That is what did it. That is what tipped Trump over the edge. And so they are willing to concede to those policies, not to give you health care. They're not making a devil's bargain on the border in order to provide housing to people. No. It's to fund a World War III bill. That is what this is. Almost $5 billion going to the Indo-Pacific. Why the fuck we sending $5 billion over there? Fiscal conservative. Someone explain that to me. $10 billion. Look, and this is why I laughed about my hotspot video. $14 billion to Israel to commit a genocide. $10 billion to get Gaza a sandwich after they get done being bombed. Here's $10 billion. Pat yourself up after we bomb you.
Exactly.
You got to see how counterproductive. Go ahead, Garland.
Yep. And right now, and I mean, there's just a pack of criminals. There's something I reported on, and I'll report on it again. There's a guy named Amos Hochstein. Amos Hochstein is the U.S. mediator right now for Israel. So Joe Biden brought him into the State Department. He's Biden's boy. They sent him over there. His job is to mediate this thing between Israel. Well, needless to say, he ain't doing too great a job. But here's the interesting thing about Amos Hochstein. Amos Hochstein worked for the Obama administration. He was like the assistant secretary for energy. The United States overthrew the government of Ukraine in 2014. Amos Hochstein quit his job and went to Ukraine and did the exact same thing that Hunter Biden did. Anybody can look it up. The state gas company for Ukraine is called Naftogaz. This man was working for the Obama State Department. He quits the State Department and goes and gets on the board of directors in Ukraine for natural gas, making a fortune. So he goes there, he makes a fortune, just like Hunter Biden. That's why they got to protect Hunter Biden, because they were all doing the same thing. Yeah. It was the same scam. So this guy sits there, cleans up, and then 1 month before Joe Biden gets elected, he quits NAFTA gas, comes back and joins the Biden administration. Oh, by the way, do you know what Joe Biden, anybody can look this up. Look up Amos Hochstein, Nord Stream. He brought Amos Hochstein in, and his job, there's literally an article in there that says, Amos Hochstein's job was to kill the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. He was the brains behind blowing up the damn pipeline. And now where is he? He's over in Israel, supposedly mediating this. Now think about this. I'll leave it with this. His whole thing is gas, international gas and pipelines and all that. That's his specialty, right? He goes to Ukraine. He gets on the gas board. What is it under Gaza that is gigantic? What is like 122 trillion cubic meters of gas has been discovered? And why do you think they sent Amos Hochstein over there, the gas guy, to mediate it? He's over there because they want to kill the Palestinians and steal their gas. There's gas there. They can't allow the Palestinians who have it's their land. It's their gas. They have a right to benefit from it. But that's Amos Hochstein's job right now. And a lot of people have realized that when it comes down to it, one of the reasons they want to take the stuff and everything from the Palestinians is because there's gas under that. You know, haven't they done that all over the Middle East? Blow up a country because they got oil and gas? The same thing's going for the Palestinians. And Amos Hochstein right now, he's at the the business end of getting that filthy work done.
I have seen countless segments talking about United States presence in Iraq and Syria and why United States troops are being attacked in the region. Not one of these segments ever mentioned the fact that the United States still 80% of Syrian oil production. As if these groups need Iran or any country to tell them to be upset about the United States. But I want to show you guys it, because this is what this bill really is. People calling it a border bill. Fuck y'all talking about? This is a World War III bill. And I'm still not from Due Distance. They're my boys. They're my homie at Due Distance. So taking that from them, it's a World War III bill. And I'm going to show you guys the meltdown corporate media is having, because allegedly, I think the vote's on Wednesday. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. Mike Johnson is about to kill this bill because Trump don't want this bill to pass. Because electoral politics bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But now listen to Democrats' reaction, because they don't care about anything else other than funding war, than funding empire. There's going to be a lot to say. Feel free to interrupt anytime, Garland, if you have something to say. I'm going to let it play, because this is Michael Bennett. Remember, I think he ran in 2020, or was it 2016? It was one of those elections. And he was trying to pretend to be like an average Joe, but he was like he was trying to pretend that he was like, I agree with Bernie on economics. Meanwhile, he was a fucking war hawk. He was just an unhinged war hawk. He trying to steal the aesthetic of a Ewing guy. And the reason I'm telling you guys this, because I remember Bernie people like, yeah, that dude Michael Bennett, he's not that bad. I'm like, are you guys out of your goddamn mind? But anyway, let me play, and you guys will see why I say that. He was one of the people that was criticizing Bernie for speaking out against the Afghanistan war. Let you guys know who this guy is. But let's continue.
Joining us now is
let me turn it up. Volume was low for some reason. Here we go. Let's get started.
Michael Bennett, member of the Intelligence Committee. Senator, I think I was just going through the arguments that are made by all of the foreign policy people, bipartisan foreign policy people. I mean, Lindsey Graham.
Wait till you hear this, Garland.
What do you do for Ukraine?
We have to fund Ukraine. We cannot fail. It's not an option. The Ukrainian people have done more with their bravery over the last 2 years than anybody could have imagined. They took back.
For one, you guys already failed. Two, the only thing accomplished in Ukraine that you guys sacrificed an entire generation of people. But let's continue.
Back half the territory that Putin took from them. They were able to, without even a navy of their own, they were able to push Putin's navy out of the Black Sea, allow food to travel around the world. And their fight has not been a fight just for Ukraine. It's literally been a fight for democracy. It's been a fight for NATO. It's been a fight for U.S.'s national security. They have been engaged in, I would say, the most successful proxy war in history. And
proxy war?
I can't. And this is
Proxy
they actually
war.
say it now, Garland. They actually say it now. They actually admit, because for a long time they was pretending, no, we're not doing
They would say you were a Putin puppet. They actually attacked people of being Putin supporters for saying that it was a proxy war. Everybody knows it's a proxy war. But here's the thing. Why is our national interest on Russia's border? Our national interest is Taiwan on China's border. But China and Russia's national interest isn't in Canada. It's not in Mexico. Our national interest is in the Black Sea, the Sea of the China, South China Sea. It's these people believe that the United States, it's the people should look up the Wolfowitz doctrine. They just believe that we should run the world for all eternity and nobody has a right to say anything else. You know, one other thing I'll add. Tucker Carlson mentioned the prosperity of the West, right? Of the West prosperity, because in 45, we've had a system where the West was prosperous. He didn't mention that it was at the expense of the global South, that the West was prosperous in the same way that if you go to your ATM machine and withdraw $100 and I stick a gun in your back and steal that $100, I can say I'm prosperous and you're not.
Yeah.
But I stole your money. That's the kind of prosperity that we got, was from stealing, murdering, marauding, and acting like pirates all throughout the global South. And then, you know, Tucker Carlson didn't get into that. I don't know if he believes it or not, but it is factual.
This is where I want to play this part again, where he called it the most successful proxy war ever. You know, with hundreds of thousands, entire generation of Ukrainian men. Job well done. They're all dead. Job well done. They don't give a fuck about Ukrainians. It's crazy. And Michael Bennett is hilarious because he's like a neocon frat bro, a warmongering surfer. That's what he sounds like when he speaks. Come on, bro. Let's arm Nazis in Ukraine, bro. That's Michael Bennett.
Because we don't need any money for here, man. It's not like we need money at home. These people have completely lost touch with the United States. They are now protecting the empire. They are, you know, people, if anybody wondered what it would be like if the neocons came to full power, now they know. They're just fascists. They don't care about the United States. They don't care about our people. They don't care about our infrastructure, none of that. They're just now feeding money into the weapons manufacturers and repeating the lies. They know Ukraine has already lost the war. If they don't know, it's because they don't care. They're pushing the narrative. This is what they're told. If the narrative tomorrow changes to the war's over, Ukraine won, they'll say the war's over, Ukraine won. It doesn't matter to them if it's true or false.
What's that? Let's continue to get even more unhinged. I just want to play this part again because forever they will label you a Putin puppet, as you said, if you said exactly what he says right here about us engaging in proxy war against Russia.
Their fight has not been a fight just for Ukraine. It's literally been a fight for democracy. It's been a fight for NATO. It's been a fight for U.S.'s national security. They have been engaged in, I would say, the most successful proxy war in history. And for the United States to turn our back on them now would be catastrophic for our national security and catastrophic for people all over this planet that hope to live in free societies.
It's catastrophic.
Go ahead, Garland. I know there's a lot down there. Go ahead.
Here's the first thing I think. It's catastrophic to stop a war. Right? If we stop a war, it'll be catastrophic. The only responsible thing to do is continue a war with a nuclear superpower. Stopping a war with a nuclear superpower is catastrophic. Imagine that kind of logic.
We are fighting for democracy, Garland. You know the country that made it illegal for workers to collectively bargain? That democracy. You know the democracy that banned opposition parties? Except the fascist one? That democracy. The democracy that banned opposition media. That democracy. That's the democracy that Michael Bennett claims we are fighting for in Ukraine. Liberals have been brainwashed by corporate media to the point where they really believe this. It's unbelievable. I'll let it continue because they are just getting started. I
want to add one other thing about the democracy.
Go ahead.
And we're supposed to believe that Ukraine wants to take back all of Donbass and eastern Ukraine, where all the Russian-speaking people are, and they want to take back Crimea. So that's somewhere around 10 million people, right? We're supposed to believe that Ukraine wants to bring these people back into Ukraine, but they speak Russian. We're supposed to believe that Ukraine's going to bring back in 10 million people where it's illegal, literally illegal to speak their own language. Oh, and it's a democracy, right? So if you bring 10 million people back into Ukraine, right now they're estimating about 25 million people, right? You bring 10 million people back in that are all pro-Russian. They're going to vote as a bloc, and they're going to vote in a pro-Russian government, aren't they? So we're supposed to believe that Ukraine's going to bring these 10 million people back and let them vote, and they're going to vote in a pro-Russian government. It makes no sense.
No sense at all. They don't expect you to think, though. They don't expect you to think. And this is the point I make at Nigga CJ earlier this week. You notice how Michael Bennett mentioned that we can't turn our back on Ukraine. We can't break our promises. Sir, they are not an ally. They are not NATO. We have no obligation to them. And notice how they want politicians to keep their promises to war, but politicians turn their back on the American people. Not a big deal. So I am to the left of a public option. I think we need to nationalize healthcare. But Joe Biden ran on a public option. Where's Michael Bennett saying we can't turn our back on the American people this way? You can't betray the promises you made to the American people. Didn't you say you was going to increase the minimum wage, Joe Biden? Why are you turning your back on the American people? You notice they never say that. It's only you turning your back against war, Joe Biden.
Student loans. Student loans? How about that? Did they say, did Michael Bennett, is he saying we can't turn our back on students? We promised them that we would forgive student loans, and I could care less. In fact, you could take this money and forgive student loans. You're not going to do it. Can we turn our back? Remember this? If you vote for Joe Biden in Georgia, 2,000 coming. You could argue that that's kind of like buying votes. But anyway, notwithstanding that argument, you said that. And then as soon as people voted for him, they're like, yeah, well, we said 2,000. What we meant was you already got like 1,400, so we'll give you 600 and it'll all equal. Did they say we turned our back on them? That's not what we told them. No, because they don't care about us. In fact, I put it like this. If that's their idea of not turning their back on Ukraine by throwing them into a meat grinder, I'm happy for them to turn their back on me. Please turn your back on me, because I don't want to be thrown into a meat grinder.
So Congress has a 17% approval rating. People hate United States politicians because they don't follow through on their promises. I promise you those numbers will flip if they had the opposite mindset where they decide they're going to break promises on war. Break all the promises on the war you want, fam. Break promises on war, keep your promises to us, and we all gravy. But that's not what happens. But let's let it continue. We got maybe another 10, 15 minutes, and then we wrap. I don't want to take too much of your time tonight, Garland. So we wrap up here in maybe another 10, 15 minutes. But let's let it continue here.
And for the United States to turn our back on them now would be catastrophic for our national security and catastrophic for people all over this planet that hope to live in free societies.
It just strikes me that the switch from Mitch McConnell, from inside the Republican Senate, hard to fathom what could have happened in the last 24 hours.
Bro, she talks like I talk, and I took a lot of fucking shots to the head in my life. Like, how is she on court with me? I know that had nothing to do with politics, but every time I see her, I'm astounded. I grew up with speech impediment. I took thousands of punches to the head. I talk like this for a reason. Why the hell you talk like this? Anyway, sorry, I'll let it continue. That was just me joking. Hey, let's continue.
Other than Donald Trump exerting his pressure and a new speaker of the House who yielded to that.
It's unthinkable to them.
The way for the Senate.
Go ahead, Garland, if you want to chime in.
It's unthinkable to them. How could this be that the Congress could not spend hundreds of billions of dollars on war? I mean, she looks almost like she's in pain. She's emotionally torn. Oh God, how could this happen? Like she's lost some kind of a relative. This is unthinkable. It has to be Trump. Because it could be nothing else but Trump. Everything that happens, of course, is always Trump. But look at the pain. Do you see her doing this over the homeless people? The people that are dying of easily curable diseases because they don't have health care? She could give a crap about them. But God forbid that people have to suffer around the world by not having this war with a nuclear superpower.
Well said, Garland. Let's continue. I'm just cracking up, man. Like, she's a professional news person. She sounds like me when I'm stoned on the stream sometimes.
Pressure. And a new Speaker of the House who yielded to that, leading the way. For the Senate to defer to the House is so unusual on a foreign policy issue of this magnitude.
Well, it's staggering. I mean, I do believe that Mitch McConnell wants to fund Ukraine, but we'll see whether that's true or not.
That's the number one thing they care
Anybody who
about.
looks at this and says, "Oh, this was just the Senate Republicans capitulating to the House," is missing the real point, which is what you're talking about, Andrea, which is this is Donald Trump exerting his thumb, putting it on top of people that had negotiated a bipartisan deal that, as you pointed out, was a
so, Garland, their strategy this election is to paint Ukraine funding being blocked on Donald Trump.
They must be working for his campaign. You know what I'm saying? Hey, Donald Trump won't fund the war. People are going to be like, oh, you know what? I wasn't going to vote for Trump, but now that he won't fund the war, hey, you'll be seeing people running all through the black community with red hats on. If they find out, they're literally, the only good thing about this is it's on MSNBC, so nobody's going to see it anyway. Who the hell watches that anymore? Look at their numbers. You got more people watching right now on RBN than is going to see that video in the life that it stays up on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know who's watching it? People like us. The only reason it gets any views is because people like us will play these videos to like humiliate these people and talk about how horrible they are. Nobody's like watching it saying, boy, I need to get some accurate information. Let me turn on MSNBC. That ain't happening.
I think the professional managerial class watch it because this is how they train each other in propaganda. Like they're like, this is how we speak on the war. This is the narrative that we want to spread on this. It's narrative control. So they know how to talk to their friends about this. This is the liberal suburban wine moms. And the reason why we do propaganda report on RBN is because when you watch these shows, it's literally seeing the mind of the government. You can see exactly what the government thinks. When you watch Morning Joe, that's straight up state media. So when you see exactly what they say on CNN, on MSNBC, might as well be a press conference. You know exactly where the enemy is coming from, and you see how important funding war for them is. Like, to me, it's crazy that people won't see this statement and not become immediately radicalized, because the first thing I think about is the urgency they show for Ukraine is the urgency I show for the working class. Like, it's the same sense of betrayal that Michael Bennett felt for another country across the fucking Atlantic Ocean. It's a sense of betrayal I feel every time a politician betrays the working class. But whenever the politician betrays the working class, I'll just get over it. Oh, this campaign promises wasn't kept. But anyway, let's continue. We wrap up here soon, but I just want to play just a little bit more of this, and we can.
Sure. Deal. I would say a deal that is needed because the border of the United States is overrun. We're seeing the effects of that in Denver. We're seeing the effects of that in Colorado. But the Republican Party, who are consumed in the House with impeaching Mayorkas without any evidence of any kind of an impeachable offense, in my view, have now impeached themselves again on the issue of immigration.
I can't believe anyone how did the guy become a politician? A lot of people say Nikki Sharon, like, no, I'm not the guy, guys. I'm not a politician. You know what I mean? There's a skill set. This guy is a surfer bro, man. I don't know how he made that far. For a second time, I'll move on because this is Chuck Schumer on, once again, my favorite state media show, Morning Joe, where he essentially check. Sorry, my screen blacked out. All right, we back. So Chuck Schumer was on Morning Joe, and he essentially threatens American children and U.S. soldiers' lives if we can't pass Ukraine funding. That's how I hear this. Where he's like, we can't pass Ukraine funding, that we got to sacrifice United States soldiers. I'm going to let it play, and I'll get your reaction.
We're at a turning point in America. This bill is crucial, and history will look back on it and say, did America fail itself? Why is it crucial? Well, if we don't aid Ukraine, Putin will walk all over Ukraine. We will lose the war, and we could be fighting in Eastern Europe and a NATO ally in a few years.
So we're supposed to believe this, that Putin is so weak that he can't defeat Ukraine because they're out of missiles. They ran out of missiles like a month into the war, according to these people. They don't have any decent equipment. Everything's falling apart. Ukraine's beating them. It's just a completely, a total Russian misadventure that's losing. I mean, they're just a complete inept, incompetent army. But they're also going to attack NATO, destroy the entire NATO army, and push all the way to the English Channel. I think there's a contradictory argument here. How can you tell us how incompetent and how weak the Russians are, but then also tell us they're so weak they can't beat the Ukraine, and next they're going to take on the entire NATO army, which ain't much right now. The bottom line is this: they don't care. They're like psychopaths. You know, psychopaths don't even worry about the future or about the what's going to happen as a result of their actions. Ukraine's already lost the war. They're just like Weekend at Bernie's, kind of a great metaphor for Joe Biden, but they've already lost the war, and they're just trying to say, like, look, we got to eat one last time, man. Can we get one more batch of money before this thing falls apart? We know it's going to fall, but we think we can get one more $100 billion bill through to fill our pockets before it collapses on us. That's the reality of it. Before the ATM runs out of power, they want to get the last $100 billion out of it, out of this latest international military scam.
Now, there's a reason why they try and kill this motherfucker right here, Julian Assange, because the people who think the United States cares about really winning these wars, pretty unserious. They don't care. They calling for more money and weapons to go to Ukraine for the military-industrial complex. This war is over. Everyone knows this war is over. They don't care. They don't care if hundreds of thousands of Ukraine. I don't know. You probably know the numbers more than me, but I saw a number that said 500,000 that Ukraine.
Somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million. You know, we don't exactly know, but 500,000 is a good number, probably higher. But think about this. Generally, at least 3 to 1 with injuries. So you're looking at probably around 2 million or more when it comes to wounded and dead in a country that has 25 million people now. All the ones that could got the hell out.
Yep. So Julian Assange is going to explain why we're at war in Ukraine, essentially.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
The goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war. Now you guys see why Chuck Schumer wants funding so much? Why Michael Bennett wants funding so much? It's not about winning. It's about keeping the gravy train running. And it blows people's mind when they realize it's really that barbaric. It's quite literally that simple. Go ahead, Garland.
You know what kills me? When people say, well, the problem with the Democrats is they don't have any spine. And I think to myself, you don't understand the situation here. If you think the Democrats don't have any spine, what they're implying is they really want to do good, but they won't stand up to the Republicans. No, it's not that they don't have any spine. I put it like this. Look at this. You try to stop the wars for funding, their spine is titanium steel. Their spine is black diamond. It is the hardest surface known to in the universe. If you try to stop them from funding the war, okay. But if it comes to something for the working class, then they get in a pillow fight with the Republicans. Oh, don't do that. No. Oh, well, we'd like to give you the money. And when they don't even have Republicans, they'll take Manchin and Sinema, and they're the designated Republicans. They're like, hey, we don't have any Republicans that can stop us from giving money to the working class. They're like, all right, you are designated Manchin and Sinema. We want y'all to block everything, and then we'll just say that y'all are the designated Republicans until we actually lose to the Republicans in the midterm. I mean, they don't even need Republicans. They'll mix some up when they don't have them just to make sure that they don't give any money to the working class.
I'm going to show you guys the funniest shit I wasn't planning on showing you guys, but I want to make Garland's point even more. Where is this fight in Nancy Pelosi when it comes against fighting Republicans? Because Nancy Pelosi called Ko Pink a bunch of Chinese, secret Chinese. They also Putin puppets. I guess they both citizenship in Russia and China, apparently. But look at this video. This came out earlier today. I didn't have time to make a segment together. I'm just throwing this together at the end of the stream. I think this shit's funny. Medea Benjamin said, wow, Nancy Pelosi was going to hit me because Ko Pink called out Nancy Pelosi for being an Israel apologist. And look how hardened, and this is to your point, girl, and look how hardened of a warrior Nancy Pelosi is when it comes to holding ground on the Israel-Gaza issue. They got these activists screaming at her. They've been protesting her for weeks. She's not fucking budging. She's holding ground. Not only is she holding ground, she was fucking about to punch Medea Benjamin in the goddamn mouth. I am not exaggerating. That is what she's saying on Twitter. Let's look at this.
Voting yes or no? Are you going to vote no on the money? Are you going to vote no on the money? Are you going to vote no? $1 million. Are you going to vote no on the money?
Congratulations on making money on it. We're not Russian sponsored. We're not from China.
You guys see what they said? We're not Russian sponsored. We're not from China. And Medea says that multiple times, referencing when Nancy Pelosi called Koping activists out, apparently for being dual Russian and Chinese citizens who got allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party or whatever. Yeah, no, then that wasn't on Fox News, fam. Nancy Pelosi. Not Fox News. Nancy Pelosi. Just let you know.
Well, how about this? How about this? So what you're saying is Russia and China is against genocide? I don't think that's an insult. You know what I mean? Hey, you're trying to stop genocide. Putin doesn't want genocide. And I'd be like, well, is that supposed to be an insult to Putin to say he's in opposition to genocide? I'm not funded by him, but apparently you're in favor of genocide. And in your opinion, he's not in favor of genocide. And you think that's an insult. That tells me all I need to know about imperialism. You know what? I wish that when they came up to Nancy Pelosi and said, we'd like to stop the genocide, she said, you must be working for Garland Nixon, that genocide-hating bastard. I know you're working for him. I'd be like, yeah, okay, I got him. I pushed him. All right. The hat. I gave him a free I support Yemen hat to do it.
Let it continue because they haven't even got to the funny part yet.
Our headquarters is right here in the United States, and we don't want you giving any more money to Israel.
Our bridges are crumbling.
San Francisco has so many problems. We need the money at home. Congresswoman, we need the money at home. Shame on you. Don't call us Russian apologists or Chinese apologists. You are an Israel apologist. You're an Israel apologist. Stop supporting genocide. Shame on you.
So then he did post this. This is funny. Bucking at him. Look at this.
You are an Israel apologist.
I'm gonna show. Look at this. Nancy Pelosi literally bucking at him. Have you ever seen Nancy Pelosi fight this hard for the working class?
Against the working class? Yeah, she fights hard. But you know,
she
I'm
was
glad
fucking
to see
fuming.
that.
Like, she has so much Botox, she can't show that much emotion. You know what I mean? Because of the plastic surgery. But you see how fucking fuming she is? That's as much emotion as she can show in her plastic ass face. But go ahead, Garland.
Well, I'll say this, and because I know Medea Benjamin, and I like Medea Benjamin. I've known her for years, right? She's a friend of mine. But I remember in 2020 when people like me were saying, there ain't no way in hell I'm voting for these war moms. Biden, you got to be kidding me, right? Medea was like, no, Trump's bad. We got to vote for Biden. A lot of these people who are good-meaning people actually thought that Joe Biden was an option, and people like us were saying, I think you're making a mistake. And they, we got the whole, well, we'll just elect him and pull him to the left or whatever. We're like, yeah, good luck with that. Well,
Medea Benjamin
as
really
horrible
said
as
that.
this is,
she was one that said that. She said that?
Yeah, she was
Medea
one
Benjamin?
who said she was voting for Biden because
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, she was.
God damn it,
She
Medea.
was one of them.
I didn't know
But
that.
but here's the bottom line. This is what it took, I think. We couldn't tell them. We tried to tell these people what they were dealing with. We couldn't tell them. It took this to show them that they were dealing with people that are pure fascists. And the reason they hate Trump the worst is because he wanted to get a peace deal with, and this is not a pro-Trump thing. He's far right-wing. I'm a far lefty. But I'm saying he wanted to get a peace deal with North Korea. And he doesn't like a war with NATO, with Putin, and he's a little scared of nuclear war. The reasons they hate Trump are the only good things about Donald Trump. And that's what they hate about Donald Trump. If you could, the only things, if I can find anything good about Donald Trump, I will guarantee you those are the reasons that these the neoliberals hate him.
Like the people who told people who vote for Joe Biden, they should be embarrassed. If I voted for Joe Biden, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. You understand? You guys understand how much my mental health would be fucked up right now? I already feel bad that I can't stop the Gaza genocide.
Exactly.
Somehow. Like I feel like I'm mad at myself for not being fucking Superman, apparently. Like, man, I'm a taxpayer in the empire. That alone is enough. You guys endorse Jim Crow Joe, the person who wrote the fucking crime bill? The guy who supported the Iraq and Afghanistan war? The guy who supported Israel during their bombing campaign in Lebanon in the 80s? You know the bombing campaign that freaked Ronald Reagan out? Nigga, Ronald Reagan was like, bro, you guys gotta chill out. Joe Biden was to Reagan's right. Joe Biden has been the most unhinged Zionist in Senate easily over the last 30 years. You can say he's 1A. There's 1Bs and Cs and Ds, right? Like the Mitch McConnells, but no one is more pro-Israel than Joe Biden. The idea that anyone will vote for him, especially people who know who that is fucking shameful. I'm sorry to say. You guys can still be friends with Medea and whatever. She's still based in a lot of ways, but man, that is deeply disappointing. Because to me, we've said this on RBN many times, I forgive people. I know I sound like a badass on the show. I forgive people who don't know. You know what I mean? So the person who vote Biden that don't know, it's the people who do know about what they do and then they advocate for Biden. Those people made me sick. Nigga, you know about the Iraq war? You know about the crime bill? You know this nigga's record? You still endorsing them? The person who vote Biden now habit, then I'm not really that mad at them guys if you guys don't understand. I'm not that mad at those people. It's the propagandists. And I would never understood this. I had a brutal divorce with the Bernie left over this issue. I refused to give ground. And I said it many times at that time. I said it before Gaza, Garland. I said, if you vote for Biden, knowing what he did, you're disgusting. I'm sorry that hurt your feelings, but he's the most anti-black, violent politician in the modern era. And then you guys are surprised this motherfucker gets the most powerful position known to man, the presidency. You guys gave Joe Biden that. And then you guys surprised he's supporting the genocide. He's funding Nazis. Get the fuck out of here. You guys can still like Medea. I'm not telling you guys to cancel her, but that's very disappointing to me. Like, you guys doing these actions just to fucking get support for the Democratic Party? Nigga, is that what it's for? Are you protesting Democrats just to get people to support your organization so they can support Democrats? Like, that's
right.
Unbelievable. Sorry, go ahead. I can last. Go ahead, Garland.
And the thing about it is, it was all about this. Oh, Trump's so bad. Trump's so bad. I said in 2020, I'll put it like this. I said in 2016, I said, now I'm a lefty, you know, I usually write in like the ghost of Hugo Chavez or something like that, right? Okay. But I said then, if somebody put a gun in my head and said, you got to choose Hillary or Trump, I'd have voted for Trump. If somebody put a gun in my head and said, you got to vote for Joe Biden or Trump, I'd have voted for Trump. I would have chosen Trump over those people. But now, I'm not, certainly, I ain't voting for nobody in this system, but I'm just saying from the perspective of what you just said, I know their history. I know who these people are. I know what they're going to do. I'm not voting for that. Now, I'm certainly not voting for Trump, but my point was, to me, even when people were saying to me, well, you know, Trump this, Trump that, and I'm like, I don't know Trump that much. I know he's terrible, but I know these people are really, really dangerous. And they scare me. And there's no circumstance under which I'm voting for those people. I don't understand the whole issue of people being that anything could be scarier to you. Trump or anybody else could be scarier to you than Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton. To me, it's absurd.
Yeah. Garland, thanks for joining me today. It was a fun conversation. I told you guys, we had another banger. Nick at Night season 2, banger after banger after banger. And we just had Joshua Wells on last show exposing the corruption in unions. We had our brothers from Due Distance on. We had Nico House, who I will be on this show on Wednesday. We had Misty on. Every show Nick and I, we bring on a banger of a guest for you guys. CJ will be hosting League Camp tomorrow. Banger after banger after banger, my friends. Make sure you like, subscribe. Make sure you guys check out Garland next thing if you haven't. I'm a big fan of his channel. Great conversations as always. I would love to have you back on Nick and Knight, where we have these around 1 hour foreign policy, just general politics conversation. Very enjoyable conversation tonight. What can they find you, Garland?
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Telegram, and I'm on YouTube. And I do a lot of stuff on my YouTube show, but I'm going to recommend. Friday I had Jody Brar on. Jody Brar is she's actually the chairman of the Communist Party of Great Britain, right? But she studied Lenin for like 30 years in depth.
Yeah, I gotta watch that.
You watch that show. She is incredible, absolutely brilliant. I just sat there and just learned stuff from her for like an hour and a half. So Jody Brar, I think it's called Imperialism, Decadent and Doomed. It's the latest volume. I got a bunch of volumes, but the last one is really incredible. That's one I would recommend to anybody who's of a revolutionary nature, who want to understand about revolution. We talk about Lenin's book, The Revolution in the States, that kind of stuff. It's great.
Fantastic content, man. I'm glad that you're doing stuff like that. And I'm glad that people are they like not doing this incrementalism bullshit no more. You know what I mean? So like we need to be working for big change, especially in the light of what we're dealing with. So I'm glad that you have her on and educate people on that. So anyway, make sure you gotta check out Garland Nixon. We'll be back tomorrow with Lee Camp. I think CJ hosting Lee Camp. We got Sabby and JB on Thursday. I have another show on Thursday. I have another union leader I'm trying to bring on. We had Joshua Welch that exposed the teacher union and how corrupt they are on Thursday. I had one of the leaders of the steel workers union. Like, guys, the professional managerial class hates RBN. Union workers love RBN. You guys have me on. We got a ton of union people that watch us. I just did a last show like, hey guys, if you're a union, if you want to come on RBN, share your story. I said that a ton of people start reaching out to me. Anyway, so that's what we're gonna do. That's a big series I'm focusing on RBN, is exposing the corruption from union leadership. I know you saw the story of UAW endorsing Biden, even though they endorsed a ceasefire, and then they endorsed a guy who's opposed to ceasefire. A lot of people in this country worship unions too fucking much. They don't realize they've been hijacked by the capitalist class, and that's why we're here to expose that. And as I was doing the series, people in unions are begging to come on to share their stories. So this is a series we're working on. We're trying to get a steelworker union guy on. There's someone who was in a union with warehouse workers. He want to come on and explain how union bosses undercut their labor acts as well. And eventually, maybe this summer, I'm gonna have a round table with a bunch of union people on. And they all call for general strikes and all that. Anyway, that's coming up soon. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys check out Garland. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.